Fewer ships are passing through, and they are paying higher costs to do so. Two of the world's most important canals, the Panama and Suez Canals, are being closed after being operational for more than a century. Global shipping is severely affected. This recent news has caused great distress. Global trade ships are stuck in the Panama Canal due to a severe drought, while ships passing through the Suez Canal are experiencing delays, forcing some to take a long detour around Africa. With all these problems, all attention is focused on the Arctic Passage, a $43 billion project. But where exactly does this passage lead, and why has it not been considered as an option before? Well, you're about to find out. Welcome to a new video. Today we take you through this new canal that will definitely destroy the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. If you like this type of content, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Now let's get started. To better understand why the Panama Canal and Suez Canal are no longer used as a preferred route, let's take a quick look at how they came about and their current challenges. The Panama Canal is an 82 kilometers artificial waterway in Panama that connects the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. This canal helps reduce the time it takes for ships to travel between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, allowing them to avoid the long and dangerous route around the southern tip of South America. This enormous canal is one of the largest and most difficult engineering projects ever undertaken, and definitely changed the world when it was officially opened on August 15, 1914. So how did this great canal come about? Let's take a trip back to the gold rush hour of the mid-19th century. Before the creation of the Panama Canal, Panama was often used as a shortcut for shipping. Freight ships from New York to California docked on the Pacific or Atlantic side and transported their goods through what is now Panama. Eventually, a railroad was built to create a shortcut that would help facilitate transportation. But transportation was still quite difficult, so traversing the small land of Panama made a lot of sense. The French began work on creating a canal on January 1st, 1881. However, the construction of this canal turned out to be more difficult than it seems. This is due to the dense jungle and extreme weather conditions, and soon there was an outbreak of tropical diseases that killed thousands of workers. By 1884, the mortality rate had risen to over 200 deaths per month. And then on May 4, 1904, the United States took over and purchased the French equipment and excavations, including the Panama Railroad, for $40 million. With this, the United States also paid the new country of Panama $10 million and a payment of $250,000 each following year. The chief engineer, John Frank Stevens, a self-taught engineer who had built the Great Northern Railway, was put in charge of this new project, and after months of construction, Stevens concluded that the sea-level approach was a completely unsustainable proposition and suggested that, instead of a sea-level canal, a system of locks would be much better. This system would raise and lower ships from a large reservoir 85 feet above sea level. This would create both the largest dam and the largest artificial lake in the world. At that time, after 10 years of construction, the Panama Canal was finally completed in 1914, and an estimated amount of $500 million was used to complete the project. That's equivalent to $15.2 billion in 2024. Now let's talk about the Suez Canal. It is worth noting that the Suez Canal was the main reason why the Panama Canal was created. First of all, this canal is an artificial waterway at sea level located in Egypt that connects from the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. It is 193 kilometers long and is a key trade route between Europe and Asia. Before the creation of this canal, numerous attempts had been made to connect the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. Even the ancient Egyptian civilization was interested in connecting the Nile with the Red Sea at one point. Thousands of years later, during the stay of the French campaign in Egypt and Syria in late 1798, Napoleon expressed interest in finding the remains of an ancient river passage, and when he became French emperor in 1804, he began to make plans in motion to connect the Mediterranean with the Red Sea. But unfortunately, the plan it was abandoned because there was an incorrect belief that this construction would require the need for locks. The belief was based on a hunch that the Red Sea was 28 feet higher than the Mediterranean. On April 25, 1859, almost 60 years later, construction of the Suez Canal began. French diplomat Ferdinand Diepz was the one in charge of this project. It employed millions of people. Some sources estimate it at over 1.5 million people, and like the Panama Canal, the construction of this canal had its own deaths, with over 120,000 deaths. Construction of the canal was completed 10 years later, in 1869. Unlike the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal does not use a system of locks to raise or lower ships passing through its waters. This is thanks to the fact that the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea of the Gulf of Suez have the same water level, so ships can pass directly through the canal without having to be lifted by locks, making it faster and more efficient. The Suez Canal was a big deal when it opened, especially for European powers like Britain, who used it to access their colonies. But as innovative as both canals were at the time they were built, they were by no means perfect or immune to challenges. In fact, recent events have shown that the Panama Canal and Suez are no longer the reliable shipping routes they once were. The current problems facing the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. One of the main problems facing the Suez Canal is the attack by the rebels. These attacks began on October 19, 2023, when the Iran-backed Houthi movement in Yemen launched missiles and armed drones at Israel, demanding an end to the invasion of the Gaza Strip in Palestine. But this soon escalated and affected global trade when Houthi rebels began attacking ships that have little or no connection to Israel. From October 2023 to March 2024, the Houthis attacked more than 60 vessels in the Red Sea, and the impact of these attacks has been enormous. The Red Sea at the Suez Canal typically handles about 12% of the world's commercial traffic, and about 30% of the world's shipping containers flow through its waterway. So far in 2024, the Suez Canal has fallen by 64% compared to last year. Instead, several shipping companies are responding to these attacks by taking a longer route around the Cape of Good Hope, which is a much longer and more expensive journey because traveling through the Cape of Good Hope can delay the trip by more than a week, adding in some cases an additional 12 to 20 days to their journey. Take, for example, a ship sailing from Shanghai to New York via Suez, which will have to travel almost 12,370 nautical miles. But through the Cape of Good Hope, the distance increases to approximately 14,460 nautical miles. But the Houthi attack is not the only crisis facing the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal also suffered from piracy in Somalia, and to avoid this, many shipping companies chose to take the long route rather than this long journey around the Cape of Good Hope increases transport costs. And these higher costs, combined with the longer routes, are putting pressure on global trade, making the Suez Canal a much less attractive option for shipping companies on the other side of the world. The Panama Canal is also facing its own crisis because due to its severe drought, water levels are so low that authorities had to reduce the passage of ships by more than a third because with the low water levels, larger and heavier ships could get stuck. These large boats also need more water to lift them. The locks are also one of the main reasons why the drought is worsening due to two main factors: the El Niño climate phenomenon and global warming. El Niño is a natural event that brings warmer air and water to the west coast of the Americas. It is like a big heat wave that can last around 9 to 12 months. This time, the heat wave is especially strong and is expected to continue at least until April 2024. Plus, 2023 was the hottest year on record, with temperatures reaching up to 1.35 degrees higher than usual. El Niño fluctuations are caused by global climate change, and scientists warn that these fluctuations will only get worse as time goes on. So now the shipping industry is being affected as the Panama Canal typically handles up to 40% of U.S. container traffic, and these disruptions are having ripple effects on supply chains. With all these problems we have seen so far, a solution is needed. But what can be done to restore efficient global trade? Fortunately, there is a solution to the current problem, and that is the ancient Northwest Passage. The Northwest Passage is a sea route that connects the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. This pass winds through the Arctic Ocean and the Arctic island of Canada, which is located along the northern coast of North America. This route is located 500 m north of the Arctic Circle and less than 1,200 miles from the North Pole, consists of a series of deep channels through Canada's Arctic archipelago that extend about 900 miles east-west from Baffin Island north to the Roundabout Sea above the U.S. state of Alaska. However, the story of how the Northwest Passage came to be is quite interesting. The first recorded attempt to discover the Northwest Passage was the east-west journey of John Cabot in 1497. But in reality, Cabot was not on a quest to find the Northwest Passage. Rather, he was sent by Henry II in search of a direct route to the east. 5 years before John set out on his expedition, Columbus had tried to find a new way to reach Asia by sailing west. He wanted to do so because the usual land routes from Europe to Asia were blocked by the Ottoman Empire, which had taken over the Middle East. Columbus's expedition greatly influenced John Cabot, who later undertook a personal expedition. But the harsh climate and poor food supply proved too difficult for Cabot. After this, several European explorers began a quest to find the Northwest Passage. Famous explorers such as Jacques Cartier, Sir Francis Drake, Sir Martin Frobisher, and Captain James Cook failed, and many suffered disaster. Sir Humphrey Gilbert, for example, wrote about the Northwest Passage, inspiring others to find it. But he drowned in 1583 while trying to find it himself. Later, Henry Hudson, who also tried to find this passage, was stranded at sea with his young son and 7 others in 1611 and was never seen again. During his search, he had found Hudson Bay, but it was not the route he was looking for. On the contrary, this passage proved to be an icy trap. The search for the Northwest Passage continued for centuries, and more explorers risked their lives to find this passage. One of the most famous and tragic expeditions was led by the British explorer Sir John Franklin in 1845. This expedition was well prepared, just as the plans were. It was made to map the last unexplored part of the Northwest Passage. Franklin went with 2 ships, 34 men and supplies for 3 years. But this expedition also ended in disaster because Franklin and his crew never returned. Soon enough, rescuers searched the waters and made new maps. Many artifacts from the expedition were found at the time, including notes that the ships were trapped in ice in 1846. The notes also said that Franklin died in 1847 and another captain took over. Although Franklin's mission ended in tragedy, the information gathered during his expedition helped map parts of the Northwest Passage expedition. After so many deaths and losses, the first complete navigation of the Northwest Passage did not occur until 1906, when Norwegian explorer Amundsen navigated the entire route. He made this voyage between 1903 and 1906 with a small crew of 6 people. The reason behind Norwegian navigator Amundsen's expedition was to avoid debt collectors, but his simple escape led to historic achievements that made him famous. Using a small fishing boat, Amundsen was able to navigate shallow waters, which helped him complete the journey. His accomplishments were notable, inspiring other explorers to sail the Northwest Passage with enthusiasm. Years later, between 1940 to 1942, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police ship made history by becoming the first ship to navigate the Northwest Passage in both directions, from west to east and vice versa. Today, with the Arctic ice melting at an alarming rate, the Northwest Passage may be the answer to the current problems facing the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. With what we have seen so far, there is no doubt that it can be said that the Northwest Passage is going to be very difficult to navigate, but advances in technology and changing environmental conditions are making it a possible alternative to the Panama Canal and Suez. This forgotten route could be the key to solving the modern challenges of global shipping, which makes us wonder if it is time to transition from the Panama Canal and Suez to the Northwest Passage. Now that we have the interesting details of the Northwest Passage covered, let's look at why it would be a good alternative route for ships. The Arctic Ocean is melting faster than ever. Since 1979, the calculated amount of ice said to be melting is about 3.15 million summer ice. It's like losing an area the size of India. Ice in the Arctic Ocean is shrinking by 76,800 square kilometers each year. This rapid change makes the previously impossible idea of using the Northwest Passage as a major shipping route increasingly possible. This means ships could soon use the Northwest Passage through Canada's Arctic. If the ice melted enough, ships could sail through the passage in the summer and get from Asia to the east coast of North America faster than using the Suez Canal. On December 13, 2007, scientists revealed at a meeting at the American Geophysical Union that there were fewer clouds over the western Arctic than the previous year, which meant more sunlight was reaching Earth, warming the ocean and melting sea ice in the Arctic. As a result, the Northwest Passage could be open to ships. Additionally, the Northern Sea Route is also considered another shortcut that could work. This route lies along Russia's Arctic coast, connecting Europe with Asia, saving around 40% of travel distance. Although Russia has used this route since the Soviet era, the facilities and roads along it still need improvement. A groundbreaking moment occurred in 2013 when a large cargo ship called the Nordic Orion sailed through the Northwest Passage with the help of a special ice-breaking ship. This shortcut saved the Nordic Orion 4 days of travel time and an estimated cost of $200,000 in fuel. By taking this route, the ship was able to avoid the longer journey around the southern tip of South America, making the journey much faster and more cost-effective. Scientists have made predictions using computer models that by the end of this century, the Northwest Passage will be open for ships to navigate for an additional 2 to 4 months. This means that the sailing season will be longer, making it easier for ships to travel. Additionally, some researchers believe that the Northwest Passage will become much more accessible and easier to navigate by the mid-21st century, specifically between 2030 and 2059. When the Northwest Passage opens to shipping, this alone will change the world forever. The distance for most trips will be shortened by at least 7,000 kilometers compared to taking the long route through the Panama Canal or around South America. It will make ships travel faster and save a lot of time. Plus, the shorter distance will result in huge savings on fuel and other costs, making shipping much cheaper. This is great news for shipping companies who will jump at the opportunity to save money. As a result, we can expect to see many large ships using the Northwest Passage during its ice-free periods in the future, making it an important and busy shipping route. But the question now is whether the Northwest Passage will become a regular route for ships, and the answer to that is not yes. But when, in other words, it is no longer a question of if the Northwest Passage will become a regular shipping route, but rather when it will happen, given that the ice is melting at an increasingly rapid rate. Older, we must begin to make plans for the construction of this new canal. In addition, we must also consider how to avoid a repetition of the challenges faced by the Suez and Panama Canals. The challenges of building a new canal in the Northwest Passage. The first thing we must consider is that developing the Northwest Passage as a transportation route will require a lot of money. We are not talking about millions, but billions of dollars. Here, like the Panama and Suez canals, in which millions of dollars were invested. The Northwest Passage may require more funding than we can imagine. Good engineers will first be needed to see if the construction of a canal is possible and if the creation of ports is approved. The terminals and navigation systems will be built from scratch because there is nothing up there at the moment. Along with this, icebreakers are also needed due to the cold conditions of the Northwest Passage. Icebreakers are necessary for braking and sailing in the cold water terrain. Icebreakers are strong ships that sail through icy waters and clear a path for other ships to follow safely, and these ships require a lot of money to build and maintain. But if we want to keep the route open all year round, icebreakers are important. Another challenge we need to consider is that the Arctic Ocean is unpredictable. Ice conditions are constantly changing. Flows of icebergs and moving ice are constantly changing, so ships passing through these routes must be able to withstand the temperatures, frost, and frozen waters. Additionally, the weather changes a lot, from thick fog to storms and rapid drops in temperature. It is important to note that the Northwest Passage passes through the waters of 3 countries: Canada, the US, and Greenland. When the ice melts, the relationships between these countries could affect whether ships can travel easily, and these relationships may create new policies for ships planning to sail through their waters. There are currently no policies that determine who can and cannot pass through the Northwest Passage. On the other hand, it must be taken into account that the harsh conditions of the Arctic make it extremely difficult to clean up oil spills. If a spill were to occur in these waters, it would be quite difficult to contain and could have a dangerous effect on the ecosystem, and studies have shown that oil spills in cold environments like the Arctic Ocean can harm wildlife, contaminate food sources, and disrupt local communities. We come to the end of this video. Tell us your opinion in the comments box. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss future videos like this one. See you next time!